Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you. Welcome back to 12 Days of Breeders. Today we have Cynthia Kelly of Regis Regal German Shepherds in Spring Grove, Illinois. Cynthia, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing. You have an incredible breeding program, and I can't wait to share this with everybody. So thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
And all right, so tell me, this past weekend you had an incredible thing happen with one of your dogs. Can you share kind of the lead in and what
It
happened?
was. We specialize in providing children ages 1 and up, specifically with autism, verbal and nonverbal service dogs. We're on the cutting edge of many different areas that the parents continually share with me their fears, their hopes, their dreams for what they want for their children. And fortunately, with our bloodline, we're able to provide each and every one of those things. But specifically this weekend, I have been educating a female of mine for a young boy, not even 3 years old yet. He was born literally having a seizure from the moment he was born. And with that, he also has acquired epilepsy. And this is happening maybe 3 to 4 times a week. And they never know when it's happening. There's no forewarning that they can recognize at this point. And so they contacted me about 8 months ago and wanted to know with my program what I could provide to ensure that, especially when the baby starts walking, that he's in a safe place, that they can be alerted prior to the onset to make sure that he's not going to land on cement, that he's not going to be eating and choke. And I knew it was going to be quite the process. But I also know through 33 years of my breeding program that my dogs are more than capable of doing this. And so about 9 months ago, when I started this, first and foremost, I knew it was going to be a female because they have this intense intuitive ability to discern between different character traits of each person. They also are hyper vigilant when it comes to their specific person.
Yeah.
And so, what I found to be the best way to educate is each time this child has had a seizure, the parents have immediately taken the child's shirt off, wrapped it in a ball, put it in a plastic bag, thrown it in the freezer, and then overnighted it to me. Because with epilepsy, which is different than diabetes, for example, epilepsy, every time prior to and after a seizure, that specific person emits a scent that is 100% specific to them. And so I have been educating this female all along the way using this child's clothing, which has the scent that the child emits from his body. So I started by hiding it in places in my home, in couches, in drawers, and then we go outside and I do the same thing. So the female, whose name is Nala, was finally ready for our first visit. It's one of two that we make. And we show up in Florida, and there are about 8 people standing at the door. Now, this child is almost 3, and they've never heard a word come out of his mouth. But what they've been prepping him for with pictures and videos was that his forever dog, Nala, was coming. And it was going to be just his, and it was going to be his best friend and his companion. And they keep using the word Nala, 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 but they've never heard a sound out of him. Sure enough, we show up at the house, and there are 8 people standing at the door. And the baby is sitting on one of the caretaker's laps. And as we walk through the door, the very first thing everybody hears is this boy yell out the word, Nala, Nala. And everybody just stopped. The mom was in tears, the dad was in tears because they have been prepping this child with no response until the dog finally showed up. So it was truly truly a miraculous moment
And this is
when
the
we
first
arrived there.
word this child has
Yeah, the
ever.
first words ever,
Oh,
ever.
wow. Yeah, I
So,
have
and
goosebumps.
that's what we find with the connection with my dogs. And we don't need to figure out how it works. We just know that it does.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly. All right. So the dog immediately got in there and how did they
Immediately and bypassed all the 7 other people. Didn't look at them, didn't smell them, didn't bump up against them, went directly to this baby,
wow.
sat next to him, and Nala is licking his feet, licking his hands, and licking his arms, and literally nuzzling right up to his face to where the baby is grabbing onto her cheeks and pulling Nala's face in. And the mom is looking at me like, it's too close, that's too close. I'm like, leave them alone. They're connecting is what they're doing. And she's not really familiar with dogs, and the big dogs that she's been, that she's experienced in her lifetime, she's never really felt comfortable with. So what I know is that these families are putting their children's lives in my hands, and I can't afford to fail in any respect, whether it's my dog's alerting to the onset of a seizure or knowing that these children could cut the legs off of one of my dogs and they would never ever turn their face towards one of their owners or the family members in love and in anything but love and adoration.
Yeah.
So as we're sitting there now, we all get up and we move into the kitchen area, and still Nala is all over this little boy. And I'm thinking to myself, Nala knows something's coming. It's my first 15 minutes there. I didn't want to open up and be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
So I kind of, and I'm thinking, well, maybe she's just excited to meet him, da da da. But I knew better. I knew better. And with this, one of Nala's alerts is she will stand in front of you and she will spin. She will spin to the left, she will stop, she will then spin to the right, and she will just hold herself right there. Sure enough, that's what she did. And I felt as though it was my responsibility. We were just there for a short visit. The baby was getting ready to be put down for a nap after that, uh, until we had a full day the next day. But as I was walking out, I said to them, I'm here to tell you, just please keep an eye on the baby, because I believe Nala is telling us something that none of us are aware.
Yeah.
We left. I get a phone call literally 15, 20 minutes later from the parents telling me that the child had just had a seizure. So it was astounding. It usually takes a little bit longer for my dogs to really connect and know what their job is and things like that. And it certainly takes several different episodes or several different seizures for my dogs to alert any earlier than a couple minutes before.
Sure.
And she just moved right in and knew what her job was. So it was an incredible, incredible weekend.
And how old is Nala?
Nala is now, she is only 12 months. So she's a
Why
baby because my
beautiful.
girls don't fully mature until they're 2. My boys not till 3.5. So that in and of itself was pretty special.
Yeah, that's just incredible. So now that I have goosebumps, and this is such an incredible story. This is not like the only, this is just pretty standard for you and your dog.
It is. But fortunately, every time I experience this, which is usually on a 4-day a week program, I feel like I'm watching it for the first time.
Wow.
And the feelings that come from the parents, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, the gratitude and their ability for the first time since this child was born to actually take a deep breath and have it not catch halfway down their chest for fear that something else is going to just happen right away that they're unaware of.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Because otherwise, there really is just no way that people with epilepsy know that this stuff is coming, do they? I mean, it's
they
just
don't
it's a
they don't
very
some people have will receive headaches.
mm,
Sometimes, often with very young children, they will start to cry
mm,
because their neurological system is changing prior to the onset of a seizure. So sometimes they'll cry uncontrollably. This little boy showed nothing like that,
wow.
nothing like that. So these parents were absolutely in the dark
Mhm.
prior to receiving Nala.
And that can you well, first off, just tell us how did you get into this? I mean, Just doesn't seem like somebody wakes up one day, oh, I'm going to have epileptic service dogs.
Right. Well, unfortunately, in 2000, my
Mhm.
husband had asked me. We had gone to purchase a German Shepherd. I had had German Shepherds throughout my childhood. My father always wanted the biggest, the bettest, the smartest, the everything. And I've always been a dog person. I've always been an animal person. And I absolutely fell in love with how detail oriented they were, how you can set them on a task and
Mhm.
they will complete it.
Mhm.
As I got older, I didn't have time to raise them. We had gone out. My husband and I had gone out the day after Thanksgiving, and I had been researching secretly behind his back top breeders in the country, and this particular breeder had a female that was about 5 or 6 months old, and I had never not done a puppy ever in my life, but I needed something then. I just needed it. So we went out. We met at some shopping mall where the dog was transferred over to me. Fast forward a couple of years. And in 2000, my husband asked me what I wanted to do for Mother's Day, and I told him I wanted to sleep. So he took me by the hand, he tucked me in bed, and I woke up 2 days later. From there, um, colds started to turn into pneumonias. Pneumonia started to put me in the hospital. I lost 80% vision in my right eye, 40% in my left. I ended up spending 3 weeks at Mayo Clinic. They could find nothing. I ended up going to Sloan Kettering for about 3 to 4 weeks. And they did every mammogram and PET scan known to man. And you don't do a PET scan when you're 40 because if you bumped your hip at 11, it lights up and you think you have bone cancer, but not one single thing lit up. And I went home knowing that I had 3 toddlers at home and I was dying and nobody could figure out what the problem was. And from the time I got home from Sloan Kettering, my female, her name was Zena, she would lay across my chest with a guttural sound that I had never heard before, and thank goodness had never heard afterwards. And this continued for the next 9 to 10 days. Called my general practitioner. I said, "We're going in." He said, "We're going in for what?" I said, "We're going in for a bilateral radical mastectomy." He said, "But why? Everything came out negative." I said, "I'm not going to tell you, but what I am going to do is I'm going to write you a letter, but you got to promise me that you will not open up this letter until after the surgery." And he's known me my whole life, and he starts screaming at me, "Don't do this, don't do this to me, yada yada." And sure enough, he finally agreed. And I went and they found a tumor of 1.6 in the left breast and 1.8 in the right. And it's a very rare type of cancer called paraneoplastic syndrome. And it clones itself to appear as normal tissue. And it shuts down your immune system, starting with your eyes, because they're the most vulnerable. And then once your immune system is gone, the cancer becomes active and you have about 3 to 6 months to live. So he opened up the letter after surgery and he called me, said, "You're absolutely correct. I would have put you in a rubber room if I had read this letter prior to you going for surgery, because the letter stated very clearly that I'm going in because my dog told me to." And so from there, we knew we had something incredibly, incredibly special. And that was when, from there, out of the same line breeding, we ended up purchasing a male, and that was where we began.
Wow. And so you were able to use her as your foundation and she started
Correct.
you. Wow, that is incredible. And you're
Correct.
completely fine now. That was that just done.
It was astounding. It really was. But I also knew that the gift that I had received from her
Yeah.
could not be kept to myself. That if
Fair.
she had this ability, uh, the the gifts that could be given by her offspring, if done properly, would be endless, endless, and they are. They are.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. So you got in, you started, did you know anything about breeding when you got into this? Or you were just like, I know I
I
got to do
didn't,
this?
but my father's message to me has always rung loud and clear. And he said to me, "Cindy, I don't care what you do in your life. Just make sure that if you're flipping burgers, you're the best burger flipper there is." And so I started to research and I started to learn, and I uh, I acquired a very strong relationship with the SV in Germany. And that was where the German Shepherds were created.
Mhm.
It's called Sphärenhind.
Is it a
They call it
location
the
or
SV for short.
is it a location or a bloodline? What is that?
It's a club, basically.
Oh, okay.
It is the only organization in the world regarding canines that have never once lowered their standards as to what they require in order to define a German Shepherd of a dog of sound mind and sound body. So all of our hip elbow certifications, height weight standards, breeding practices are done directly through them.
Wow.
I also learned from the top breeders in the world who began when it was West Germany, how they breed to ensure the health and temperament, which is much different than what we do in the States.
Okay.
And that was how I began.
Can you share a little bit about that philosophy?
Absolutely. So there are three different types of breedings that breeders do in this country. And
Hmm.
I kind of say it with a negative tone because we have very limited breeding standards when it
Hmm.
comes to breeding standards in the United States.
Hmm.
You have inbreeding, which we all know what that is, mother to son, right? 1 to 1, 11 toes, a heart and a half, that kind of thing, right?
Well, you're talking about very close line inbreeding.
I'm talking 1 to 1. I'm talking mother to son.
Okay.
Okay,
Or
that's
father,
1 to 1.
daughter. Okay.
Then you have what the majority of the breeders in this country do, which is
Mhm.
called outline breeding.
Mhm.
Outline breeding, by definition, means that there's absolutely no familial or family tie between the dam and the sire anywhere.
Yeah.
When you outline breed, it's almost impossible to guarantee the health and the temperament of the puppies that you're producing
Understandable.
because you are bringing in different genetic uh, uh, uh,
Well, there's so many variables, right?
variables. Correct, exactly what I was thinking. You're bringing in genetics from all different types of bloodlines, and unfortunately, when you outline breed, you're not producing the best traits of the dam and the sire that you're using, but instead you're bringing in the worst. Now, that's not to say that you can't produce puppies of sound mind and sound body by outline breeding, but it's also not to say that you won't.
I think what you're,
And the
and can I summarize if I'm understanding this right so far? So what you're saying is because there are so many variables, this has this temperament, this has this temperament, the likelihood that you're going to produce what you're looking for, the best of both, is just inconsistent. And so you
very
might get a couple
inconsistent.
that are that, and then you're going to get a couple that have the worst traits of both. And so you just don't like, again, there's no consistency when you're outcrossing.
And the funny part, specifically with German Shepherds,
Mhm.
is the way someone can tell, and this is how I tell what I tell my prospective clients every day, is the way in which you can tell that a litter, for example, of German Shepherds has been outline bred
Mhm.
is when you look at a litter and every single puppy in the litter looks different. One's black and tan, one's black and sable, one's black or black, black and red, big head, small head, long nose, short nose. There's absolutely no way for anyone to offer guarantees because there's really no scientific reason that they should be able to.
Right.
And chances are they're not.
And
The
so in your
breeding that we
mind,
perform in,
mhm.
huh?
Well, in your
The
mind, it's
breeding
sort of
that,
like saying a mutt is, people are like, oh, mutts are healthy, but it's like, but they're unpredictable. We have no idea what they're going to be.
correct,
And so you're in
exactly.
a, yeah, in a microcosm. Okay,
You
sorry.
are. And so what we do and have done for over 30 years is line breeding.
Mhm.
So our bloodlines began out of the top two kennels in the world, out of Von Arlette and Bad Bull, when it was West Germany. They're still the top two kennels in the world. Line breeding, by definition, means that there is a familial or family tie somewhere between every single one of my breeding pairs. So
Wow.
for us specifically, what that means is that we never breed any closer in than 5 to 6 generations, but we desperately try to stay within 15 to 17 or 18. That is why when people go on my website and they look at my adolescents and adults, for example, you immediately recognize the tremendous similarities in what they look like. But when you look at my individual litters page, every single puppy in each of my individual litters looks identical. That's the perfect line bred litter. That's why contractually we offer lifetime guarantees on health and temperament, because we know what we're producing. Again, that's why we are the only organization in the country that is able to provide service dogs for children ages 1 and up. Most of these organizations wouldn't even think of offering a child a service dog prior to ages 7 or 8.
Mhm. Right. And then those parents just have to sort of figure it out with a kid who can't communicate and has no tells. How in the
And
world?
you're already late on the on the development, on the language development. You're
Yeah.
already late.
Right.
And so you're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. Wow. That's mm. So, all right. So you have this beautiful line that you've crafted, and you're saying 5 or 6 generational. Can you kind of explain, like, relationally, like what that would look like? Okay, so you have like a female here, and you're going to breed her to some stud. Where do you look in your lines for that stud? How does
So fortunately, I have the ability to have all those bloodlines. I mean,
Mhm.
to have not blood, I have the same bloodlines to have all those generations on my property. So, that is why, that is why we are always oh so careful,
Mm,
always having the pedigrees in front of us to
okay.
ensure that we never breed any closer in than 5 to 6 generations.
Mhm.
Um, we try to stay within 15 to 17 just because we don't want to go too far out again,
Mhm.
right? But that is how we do it.
In my head, I'm thinking 15 to 17 generations would be a dog that's like 15 or 17 years old at a minimum. So
Correct. Correct.
do
Correct.
you,
Which they're not breeding anymore, right? But
right. So
but
you're,
when you're talking about the different generations, if I have a female that
mhm,
breeds to 5 generations out, right?
mhm,
Uh, so I've got different dams and different sires that
mhm.
coordinate all of the bloodlines.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, so if you went 15 generations back, you would have two females maybe that split off.
Exactly.
And so you'll have a stud from this line that you can breed to
Correct.
a female because you've now gone back. So you're looking for a
Exactly.
pairing that's that far out.
Correct.
That
Correct. That's what I'm referring to.
okay. Okay. Does it get hard to manage that? Are you all within your lines? Or are you able to bring in other dogs? Or I mean, we can't just whatever you're doing is working. I can't even begin to
So
criticize. So
every 5 or 6 years,
yeah,
we will call
those
Europe,
lines
Von
work.
Arlett or Bad Ball,
Yeah.
and we will bring in a, a stud or a dam
Hmm.
that I will purchase to
Hmm.
bring in new things, whether I'm looking for a redder coat or I'm looking for a taller body or I'm looking for more muscle.
Got it.
So whenever we feel as though there's something that we can possibly better,
Hmm.
that's what we look to bring in.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So you're staying within your original lines, but they've been managed similar to how you're doing it, but giving you variety, genetic
Correct.
diversity. That makes so much
Correct.
sense. But not so much genetic diversity that you lose your consistency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, Xena
Hmm.
started with pointed ears,
Hmm.
and that was something we wanted to breed out of them. We wanted more of the rounded German Shepherd ears instead of the East German working line pointed ears that you see in those dogs.
Is there any reason other than just preference?
Just preference.
Just preference?
Just preference. I think that the pointed ears remind young children of witches and goblins. And so with the rounded ears, they get more of a feeling
They look more like
of
bears.
is right,
Your
exactly.
dogs look a
That's the
lot more
difference.
like bears. Yes, and
Right,
they're
right.
fluffier than the normal
Well,
German
and
Shepherd I
that
see.
attracts the kids.
That
That's
makes
when they
sense.
feel safe that they can pull the dog's face into their mouth, and know that although the parents object to that a little bit, my dogs don't.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Okay, so share a couple of the other things that your dogs can do because I think people are like I'm already like in awe, of course, of all this. Um, but what else besides epilepsy?
So autism, we're really on the cutting edge of that, especially with nonverbal autistic children.
Mhm.
Our mission
Sure.
is to be able to expand the knowledge base for people in general to understand the children on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
And with these special children, almost all of my families have the same concerns. Number
Okay.
one, their biggest concerns are that their young children want to elope. They want to just take off. And if the mom goes to blow her nose in a Kleenex, she looks
Mhm.
up and the kid's gone. So we've taught our dogs to tether
Okay. So
so
tell us how
that
that works.
it's
Yeah.
it's a custom belt. I don't like to call it a leash. I call it a belt. It's a custom belt that goes around the child's waist. And the
I
dogs are trained to not allow the children to go off the property line, for example.
Mhm.
When they're in a store, because they're their service dogs, the
Mhm.
child can't walk out of the store because the dog will absolutely lay down and ground itself and the child cannot physically move it. Um,
Yeah.
those are some of the things. Another important thing is, specifically speaking with nonverbal children, is their meltdowns. And what we can handle and what might look cute at 2 and 3 when they're banging their fists on the wall gets a lot more frightening for parents when their children get to be 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And for them to put on that display in the real world, people are not going to be so understanding. They're going to be afraid of it. And
Yeah.
because of that, what we have found is that with my dog's ability to calm, to bring a sense of tranquility, a sense of um, uh, 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 stillness to a child in the midst or the beginning of a tantrum. That when these children put their arms around my dogs, they find within several minutes that tremendous anger and frustration that they're feeling has dissipated.
Mhm.
And so instead of instead of the child, and this was my experience with a 19-year-old young man
Yeah.
uh, who had never had a service dog before. And I had delivered him his dog and I was getting ready to leave. And I said, I have a present for you. And I gave him this present. I said, don't get real excited about it. It was a timer, for example.
Okay.
And I said to him, but before I leave, you've got to promise me something. He says, anything, Miss Cindy, just he's going to stay here. He's going to stay here with me, right? He was very afraid that I was going to be taking his dog back home with me. So he was very compliant and ready to listen to what I was asking of him. I said, you've got to promise me that the next time you feel yourself get angry and your fists start to close, that you're going to do something for me. And his eyes are big and wide, and he's waiting for me to explain it to him. And I said, I want you to take your dog by the collar and I want you to bring him into your bedroom. And I want you to sit on the floor. And you see where I put the heart? I put a red heart at a minute 30 on this timer. I said, I want you to turn that little button to the red heart I made. And I want you to sit there until the bell goes off. And he looks at me and he says, that's it? I said, that's it. But you have to promise me that the first time you feel that, that you're going to do that for me. He said, I promise, Miss Cindy, I promise. So I leave and I leave his dog with him. And a day goes by and I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, I need to know what's going on. Nobody's calling me. 3 o'clock the next day, the phone rings and I look and it's him. And with his mom, it's always him and his mom together, by the way. And I pick up the phone hesitantly and he's screaming, saying, Miss Cindy, I did it. I promised I did it. I said, what did you do? He said, what I promised. I said, well, explain to me what happened. He said, I came home from school and my mom made me mad, really, really mad. And I'm trying not to laugh on the phone. And he said, and I could feel my fists start to get really strong. And I took my boy by the collar and I walked into my room and I slammed that door. I mean, I slammed that door hard. And he said that, and I sat on the floor and I put that button right to the red heart, like you said. And my dog climbed right on my lap. And I put my arms around him and we waited. And then that bell went off and he's silent on the other line now. And I'm waiting. And I finally say to him, "So what happened after that?" And he gives me this long pause. And finally he says to me, "Oh, we went outside to go play ball." Now, in the background, his mom is like, I can hear her crying hysterically because this was the first time in 19 years that this young man had not put a hole in the wall. So that's what I'm referring to when I'm talking about my dogs having the ability to calm. For the first time, these children are able to communicate feelings and emotions that they were never to their dogs, that
Yeah.
they were never able to express
Wow.
in any other way. And therefore, the tantrums are cut by almost 90%.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to in that.
And that's incredible because it's, well, one, it's just who wants to repair drywall, but
Right?
the fact that they can just finally decompress. And do you, is it the dog's presence? Is it like, how is that? Do you
It's the
know what's
breathing,
actually happening?
it's the temperament of the dogs that I produce.
Mhm.
It's the fact that they bring a calm wherever they go.
And so they become this consistency piece
They
emotionally.
do, they do. And it's not just a German Shepherd. It's the difference between an East German working line dog, which is going, doing, herding, panting every minute of every day, no off switch, versus the West German dogs that I produce that have a calm about them that is like no other. It's
Yeah.
the same thing that my dogs do for veterans with tremendous PTSD and anxiety that deal with trauma.
Yeah.
My dogs have removed the medication that these veterans, men and women of service, have been on, and they've been on since the day they left the service. And they're no longer in need of it because they found a calm through the breathing, or when they wake up with night terrors. And the dogs are educated to do body compressions so that they don't wake up in a terror form. They learn after the first or second time, their subconscious learns that they're waking to a compression of peace instead of anxiety.
Mm. And so when the dog is, so the dog gets on them. I'm not familiar with what that
Yes,
means. So it's
yes. The
sitting.
dog literally, depending on the size of the person,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a full-grown man, the dog will put his entire body across the man's from literally from his waist up.
Yeah.
If it's a woman and it's a male dog, the dog will compress itself on her chest, like, under the chest and the belly area, so that
Mm-hmm.
not being too much of a
Yeah.
weight on top of a woman's,
Sure.
more delicate body.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And so in that pressure, so are they awake when they are
Not
pairing?
normally.
So
Not
that, so
normally.
the dog's presence subconsciously gets programmed in the person to say you're safe, and
Yes,
they can sort of walk themselves out of the night terror and continue
that's
sleep.
what it is.
Ah, that's
That's what it is.
incredible. That's incredible. So, and I know I've had goosebumps the whole interview. The whole interview I've had goosebumps. Yeah.
You should see how it feels to actually be in with these families when it happens.
Ugh,
It's their response to it
yeah.
uh, brings me to tears every time. And like I said earlier, I don't mean to sound redundant, but every time I experience it, I feel like I'm watching it for the first time because it's a brand new experience for this family.
Yeah. Which is just incredible. Oh, I wanted you to explain because you had told me before, when you were giving me more details on how that epileptic stuff works, which I know it's unique, unlike diabetic dogs, which the
It
set.
is. It
Yeah.
is. So, unlike a diabetic dog, when you are educating the dog for the glucose scent,
Hmm.
it's glucose is universal.
Okay.
Everybody has the basic same glucose in their body. The dogs are able to discern between high and low levels
Hmm.
and alert the clients for that. But when it comes to epilepsy, what's different is every time someone has a seizure, they emit from their body a scent that's 100% specific to them. And
Yeah.
so the dogs are trained according to that specific scent.
And that makes sense. So it is a little bit more in depth with the person, the training process.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. We
And
also do saliva swabs,
oh, that makes sense. Just to get
which
their
help
scent
a lot
further.
too. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you explain also like older children? Like so the epilepsy makes sense for parents, right? Because they can't. But you started to explain to me the impact it makes on, say, teenagers who have epilepsy and how the dog just gives them that peace of mind. Can you walk us through a little bit more of how
There are
that?
several things that we do. It seems to be a lot more prevalent uh, also with a disease called POTS that seems to be affecting many, many young adults, teenagers.
Do we know what POTS
But
is?
it is a drop in their blood pressure. And it
Mm.
happens so rapidly that they can be in the shower and instantly pass out.
Okay.
And it happens without, they can't take a shower alone. They can't walk down the street alone. They can't, and it's affecting obviously every aspect of their lives.
Yeah.
But specifically when we're talking about teenagers with epilepsy, there's several new things that are out there which help. So for example, when I begin the education of my pups, I start by using a puzzle board with pegs on it.
Mhm.
And one of the healthiest things for German Shepherds happen to be blueberries. So I start with, you imagine that you've got a puzzle that's a circle and there are 10 pegs and you lift up each peg and there's a hole in the bottom of it. So when
Mhm.
I'm opening up the dog scent training, I am uh, I put one blueberry under each peg. So if there are 10 pegs in the beginning, when they're mastering it, they have 10 pegs that they pick up, find the blueberry, eat it, go to the next one. And then as they become more efficient at that, I use 7 pegs and then 4 pegs and then 1 peg.
Mhm.
In doing that, I'm also using these buttons, and they're different color buttons. And the dogs are more than capable of understanding and going to very specific colors. So whoever said they were colorblind, it's a fallacy. They're not. And what we've found and what is out there is that there's a system that you can attach to your wall, for example, and it has a button on it. So let's say, for example, the person with epilepsy is home alone with their dog and they were to have a seizure, go down and not regain consciousness, or even if they do regain consciousness, the dogs are then trained from the minute they have the seizure to go push the button, which directly connects to 911 and another family member. So they are never left to their own devices. Another aspect of that is many people that are having seizures will end up on their back with the fear that they're going to choke to death. So we're
Mhm.
also educating the dogs to grab onto them, to roll them over onto their stomachs.
Wow.
So these are the different systems that we're able to use. Some of them have watches out there. I heard that Apple actually has an app on their phone, but there's no way that a dog's nose is going to be able to press that, right?
Right.
No different than some things they've come out with watches that the clients wear. The buttons are too hard to push and they're too small, and the dog is not going to press their nose against something that's A, going to hurt them, two, not give them the recognition that what they've done
Yeah.
is actually uh, uh, is actually um, allowing them to recognize that they've done it. There's no beep to it. There's no sound to it. So they're not receiving the acknowledgement that what they've pushed is working. Because when I educate them on buttons, they're always receiving a bell or my voice saying "good job." I'll record my voice on the buttons
Yeah.
or different things like that. So that's all in trial right now. But
Mhm.
those are the different systems that are out there right now that I've already educated my dog for, so that when
Yeah.
they come out and when they're properly made, the dogs will already be educated to be able to push those.
Which is just incredible. But it makes so much sense. I mean, we can leverage technology, leverage the dog's abilities, and
Right.
really make this. And that's so much independent living for someone.
And that's what we're working for. We're not raising children, or raising adults.
Yeah.
And especially when these teenagers, uh, all of a sudden at age 11, 12, come down with epilepsy. It's the most formative years in terms of their social lives,
Yeah.
their feeling of being able to go out and be independent.
Yeah.
And without a dog, a fully trained alert dog, medical alert dog, there's there's no possibility of them becoming independent, because up until them receiving a dog, they really have no forewarning
Right.
as to a seizure.
Yeah.
So it enables them to live their lives, whether it's through grade school or middle school or high school or in college. It
Mhm.
enables them to live a quote unquote normal life without limitations.
Yeah, I had a veteran friend who he had had seizures ever since going to Iraq, and he had a dog, not quite as cool as your dog, but it would alert him. And he said, Julie, I can't tell you how many times this dog saved my life. I'll be driving, the dog will give me the alert, and I got to pull over and just wait.
A
And
hundred percent.
he saved traffic problem. I mean, who knows who could have been
Of
killed?
course, of
He
course.
So then he couldn't drive. I mean, just everything it opens the door to that you didn't even think about. It didn't even occur to me that as a thinking that I don't know when I could just fall over, taking a shower becomes scary. Just
It does become scary.
anything, anytime you're anywhere where you could fall on hard ground, which is kind of everywhere. Yeah.
One of my young adults who's in college with a service dog, um, went to her first concert. And along with her epilepsy, she found herself becoming incredibly depressed because um, she was not able to do the things that all of her peers were doing.
Yeah.
Well, she had contacted me a week ago to say to me that she went on to her very first concert. Not only did she go to her concert, but as everybody was leaving, what I've trained her dog to do is to um, be educated for crowd control. So that, number one, if she's not feeling well, the dog always puts a 2 foot perimeter around her and everybody else.
Mhm.
So there's never a time in a crowd where someone would be able to bump into her, knock her down.
How
And
does
that works with my clients with MS. It works
that?
with my clients with cerebral palsy, so that they can feel confident in their ability to walk and not be afraid that someone who's not paying any attention or could care less just knocks into them and knocks them over, not realizing that they're limited physically. So that was very exciting news I had gotten from my client last week.
That's so huge. How does the dog do that? How do they keep everybody away?
So they literally will continue to put a perimeter around them. This whole theory started for us with a young woman with cerebral palsy. And she had come to us because one of her biggest fears, she was in high school when we started with her. And
Mhm.
she used to have the same nightmare over and over again, that she would be standing at her locker and the bell would go off. And the kids, they pay no attention to anything or anybody when the bell goes off. They want to get to their locker, they want to grab something to eat, or so they're just running blindly. And she would wake up in a drenched sweat every night at the thought that she was standing at her locker, somebody knocked her down, and she has very limited movement on her right side. And what the nightmare was that there were kids at the end of the hallway laughing at her because she was physically unable to get up.
Mhm.
And that was where this whole thought process of of crowd control came from. So I educated her dog Malibu to be able to uh, protect her on all three sides as she is facing her locker. So there would never be a time that anybody could run into her and not slam into the dog first. And she hasn't had a nightmare since. So that's the kind of gift that the dogs provide.
Oh, it is just such a gift. I mean,
And that's the same thing with a concert, or leaving a stadium, or a lecture hall in college
Yeah.
when everybody's piling out at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just so incredible. I think it's peace of mind for parents, and I think your dogs also help the children prevent themselves from hitting heads. Is that something you would explain?
They do, they do.
How does that kind of
So
work?
it started with teaching the dogs to catch their fall. So, for
Okay.
example, when someone has a seizure and they drop,
Hmm.
my dogs are educated to place their bodies under them to the best of their ability prior to that person falling, especially their heads. And so uh, that then transfers over to,
Hmm.
the ability to protect that person itself,
Right.
and being able to be there for the soft landing.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine the training skills you have. I mean, it's just
Trust me, it has
blows
nothing to
my
do with
mind.
me. It has nothing to do with me. These dogs, they show me where they want to go, and then I just help uh, provide
Do you,
the vehicle for them to continue to learn their skills that they were born with.
yeah. So you can kind of tell working with the dog, like um what kind of work they would love to
Yes,
do.
yes.
They kind
And
of
the funny thing is people ask me how I train their alerts,
yeah.
and I don't. My
Okay.
dogs show me their alert.
And that's
And
where like
some
the
of
one
them
that's
want to
spinning
bark at
or
you, which is
okay.
the least favorite of all, because the last thing you want is to be in a doctor's office and your dog to start barking at you. People just think it's an untrained animal. They don't understand that it's alerting you to something. So
Right.
I try to minimize that one and mold it into something else, but they do different things. Some of them will stop and tap you with their feet.
Yeah.
Some of them will spin. Some of them will stop and refuse to get up.
Mm.
They will refuse that until you have acknowledged that they are telling you something. And there is nothing more frustrating for my dogs than to offer an alert and not be acknowledged. They
Mm.
just keep ramping up and ramping up and ramping up until that person acknowledges. And the person, they think that the dog is crazy. But I promise you, they know so much more than you ever will. Ah,
I know. Sometimes when you talk about your dogs, I just feel like humans are stupid. Yeah.
right? Exactly, exactly.
Wow, so incredible. And then some other stuff, like I just want to give people an idea of all these incredible things your dogs do. Did you have, would you call it mobility support? Was that,
Yes,
yeah?
yes. And that's
Can you tell
something
us what that
also.
is? Sure.
It is the ability for our dogs to not only when someone falls down, but
Mhm.
when people are having issues with mobility, their biggest fear is falling because they need leverage in order to get up. And what we specifically train our dogs to do, and mind you, before any of this, they are all fitted with a custom harness. You cannot get anything online because it will end up harming the dog physically. So it has to be a custom harness that has been measured specifically for that dog's anatomy, chest width, height, leg length, so it doesn't impede on their access to free mobility. But what we teach the dogs is we teach them to start on the ground with their person, and then lift in levels to help support that person to then eventually get upright.
Yeah.
When they're walking, if the person leans to the right, my dogs lean to the left. If the person leans to the left, my dogs lean to the right.
Wow.
um that's how they help to keep people upright,
That makes sense. So that helps them stay stable. Plus the harness really gives the dog the ability to do that. And
and
then,
gives the person the ability to have something solid and secure to hold on to.
and are you finding, is that mostly like, would it be somebody who maybe had a stroke and lost balance? Is this the kind of clientele maybe that's looking for this support dog?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or children with cerebral palsy,
Yeah.
or yeah, adults that have had strokes.
Mhm.
They cover all of it. They cover all of it.
Yeah, that makes, I mean, it makes so much sense. And then, what else? What else have you trained? I know you've got so many things. Is there, what else? Is there any other large? Oh, well, tell us a little bit about your veterans, because I know you've
Oh yeah, we do,
anxiety and
we
emotional
do.
support, but not just for
It's
veterans, but
Yeah. So um I wasn't quite sure in the very beginning. Uh, if I had the ability to direct my dogs into more than PTSD, anxiety, trauma, how they're trained to do the body compressions, how they're trained to alert prior to the onset of someone having a panic attack.
Mhm.
Um, like I said earlier, I didn't have to do much. They do most of it. Uh, and so what we found specifically with our veterans is they have so much trauma, they have so much PTSD, and anything can trigger it. If it's a car backfiring, if they're walking through Walmart and the lights start to flicker, it reminds them of being back in war. And so my dogs are so highly sensitive to them that they are able to alert them prior to the onset of a panic attack specifically.
Yeah.
And what my dogs tell them is we either need to find a place to sit down and regroup, or we need to get the heck out of here and go take a walk in the field and decide if we want to continue shopping this day. But
Yeah.
either way, for our veterans, all of our men and women who work in service fields, our police officers, our nurses, our doctors from COVID, firemen, teachers, uh, all of these people that are amongst the group of service workers in our country.
Yeah.
Um, whether it's from COVID, whether it's from school shootings, whether it's from whatever this is, our dogs are, eh, our people find a confidence in in the security that they receive with one of our dogs.
Mhm.
And that in and of itself decreases their anxiety tremendously,
Yeah.
especially when they know that even with me being able to say to you that I guarantee that an owner could cut the legs off of one of my dogs and they'd never turn their face towards you or one of your loved ones in love and adoration. On the opposite side of that coin, what I also know to be fact, and I base my daughter's lives on this, is that if someone, they will allow anyone and everyone up to my kids that's supposed to be. I also know that if someone shows up to do harm, they will not get within 200 feet because that is the temperament of a German Shepherd. It's
Yeah.
defined as a dog that is discerning between good and bad people. And it's pheromones that come from your skin, from your body. You
It's
can't, it's
pheromones, you
guilt
said.
literally being secreted from your pores. And you can't clothe it away. You can't perfume it away. It is what it is. And when you are guilty, when you have that thought in your mind, that's what my dogs pick up on. And
Yeah. And
so
that,
it completes that cycle of someone having anxiety, someone being fear based, someone being insecure. Um, that's where my dogs take off from the very beginning, is that sense of safety that that person feels from the very beginning from my dogs.
yeah. And so that I can see that with the veterans so much. So many veterans are like, yeah, well, my wife's great, but she's never going to notice that in the front yard. And I just can't trust her to watch out. And so it's like this. So what you've done is you've created this pretty infallible partner that they can rely on,
Exactly.
right? That says, oh, I'll let you
Exactly.
know, don't
Exactly.
worry. The kids are safe, right? Which gives him peace of mind. He's not the only person who has to manage this at the house. And then also when he's kind of spiraling or in a place, the dog can say, "Hey, hey, you're spiraling. Let's move. Let's get out of
That's
here."
it. And it
And
takes a
I
huge
love
sense
it.
of responsibility off of them because they know that they've got a 70-30 partner, the dogs being 70%, them being 30
Mhm.
in their lives.
Yeah.
And it enables them to get back to the life that they had prior to protecting our country and our rights.
Yeah. Which is just incredible. I mean, it's such a gift giving back because it is. It's quite the price to pay. So many veterans I do. I had a good friend and he would wake up in the middle of the night to go grab his rifle because he thought he was in the middle of things again almost every night. Just scary.
Yeah,
Yeah. There was no rifle. I mean, he was grabbing at
of
nothing, but
course. Of
yes, it
course.
was just it was quite a situation. Um, wow. Yeah. And then are you working with um the emotional well, I want to I do want to
The
say
ESA
I was
dogs.
yes, let's get into that in a second, but I do want to summarize because one thing that just blew my mind when you explained it to me. So you're saying, just to summarize, those when people have a malicious intent, that is what they are secreting a different chemical concoction and a different pheromone, and the dogs know that. And so that's a universal thing for humans, and your dogs have discernment. Because I remember in the beginning when I was first meeting you, I asked you, I was like, aren't like, how do you trust them to do that? Like, how do they know that I'm not just like playing with the kids or why, And you were like, oh no, Julie, it's so easy. It's so simple.
It is, and that's uh, German Shepherds have gotten a bad rap because they have 300 psi in their jaw, and most people don't understand that there are four different bloodlines in German Shepherds, and that they're hemispherically different in terms of temperament and health. You've got the American line, the East German working line, the Czechoslovakian line, and the West German bloodlines. They're completely different in terms of health and temperament. And so many people go out and they see movies about German Shepherds and they want to own one and they go and buy it without having the proper information and education to know what they need to ask for. And then they bring in dogs that either are sickly and unhealthy or are dangerous by 14 to 15 months because they didn't do their due diligence in recognize. I mean, 97% of the people I speak to have never heard of the fact that there are four different bloodlines, that most people are calling around to see where they can get the lowest price. And this is one of the breeds that you cannot ever purchase according to what you can afford. You need to purchase it instead. You either don't do it at all or you do it right.
Yeah. Oh, it makes sense because it is. I mean, done wrong, it can be very dangerous. It makes sense. Yeah.
And
And
that's the horror stories I hear daily from people all over the country who've gone out and purchased these dogs either due to lack of proper information and education, or have gone ahead and purchased them according to what they can afford, that they now want me to fix. And of course, the two traits that can never ever be trained or fixed are temperament and health. You can never teach a German Shepherd to be gentle and kind. You can never teach it to be discerning between good and bad people. You can never teach it to be confident so it doesn't grow up to be an aggressive fear biter, and you certainly cannot pay for it to be healthy. These traits are born upon conception, and that is why proper bloodlines are everything. When someone is looking at bringing one of these magnificently brilliant yet incredibly powerful animals into their world.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So tell us a little bit about the process of getting one of your dogs. Like, what would that look like? So if I came to you and said, I need this for my kid, or how does that process start and
Good
work?
question. We have three different age groups of service dogs that we provide,
Mhm.
always dependent upon that particular person being physically and emotionally able to handle it. So I will sell a 12-week-old puppy, which is
Mhm.
a full process, uh, to a client with their full understanding that this puppy will come back to me no matter where they live in this country. I have a courier that picks up at their door, drops off at mine, picks up at my, vice versa. But that puppy will come back to me every 4 to 5 months so that I can put more age appropriate, positively reinforced education on it. It's a process. Not many of my clients in need of a service dog are capable of physically or emotionally doing that particular process. We then
Yeah.
have our adolescents. So our puppies are puppies from birth till just about 6 months. From 6 months to a year and a half, I consider them adolescents. From a year and a half on, I consider them adults. So up until about 6 or 7 years ago, we only had two categories. We either had the 12-week-old puppy, which is a full process, or we had a 2-year-old adult and up, which I had spent every 24 hours of its life from 9 weeks old on, socializing it, immunizing it, uh, uh, using age appropriate, positively reinforced education on it, right? So the cost difference alone between a 12-week-old and a 2-year-old is ginormous.
Awesome.
And then we realized that we needed to open up a third category to try to make it more feasibly possible for our service clients. And that was where we came up with the category of adolescents, which we're probably selling 99% of right now.
Sure.
The difference between an adolescent and an adult is that the adolescent has been educated in every single thing that the adult has been,
Mhm.
but they're still not fully mature emotionally or physically. So sometimes if we turn over an adolescent at 12 months, they may need to come back at 16 or 17 months one time for a couple weeks, just so I can finish everything that their maturity finally wrapped around, right? Um, uh, but our process, once someone contacts us, I really get to know them. I get to know their families. I get to know if they've ever owned a dog before. If so, what breeds, how many other children are in the family, if what their home style is like, if they have access for the dog to be able to go and take its service vest off and run in the backyard and just let go of the pressure of the day. These are requirements that we have prior to even attempting to move forward with someone. My best clients are the ones who've never owned a dog because they're incredibly teachable. And I know that I can set them up perfectly with our process of being with them from the time of conception till the dog being finished.
Mhm.
Once we have realized that everything that they have is the correct environment, then my mind goes to matching them with what I have available, what's coming up, how old the dog is. Uh, and then, once we've moved forward with them, that's when because even my pups at 9 weeks, I am opening up their knowledge base to become everything, whether it's an epileptic detection dog, diabetic detection, a guide dog, hearing impaired, uh, PTSD, mobility, anxiety. And then at about 7 to 8 months, I kind of sit back a little bit. And if I can keep them that long, which I don't usually, it's in a dream what I'm sharing with you. But at about 7 to 8 months, when I have that perfect client for that
Mhm.
perfect dog, that's when I hone on the very specifics of the needs of that client. That's
Sure.
when I'll hone in on specific epileptic detection or mobility or whatever it is that they require.
Sure. That's when you're like specializing the dog's skills and honing them
Correct.
specific to that person.
Correct.
Makes so much sense.
Correct.
So, wow. So it is a pretty good journey. So the adolescents make it like crazy to think that probably within a year you could have this dog in your possession. Like if people came to you and said, "Hey,
It's
I want
interesting that
one."
you even say a year because so many of these organizations have 2 to 3 year,
Yeah.
uh, uh, waiting lists. And trust me, it's not because they're popular, but we'll get into that another podcast. But um, uh, I I found that obviously the younger the child, like I didn't realize that it had been 10 months from the time that the client that I was just came from Florida from had hired us. It wasn't until I realized that he lives in Aruba, and I happened to have been in Aruba with a girlfriend of mine the day he called me, and we're setting on that journey again, which was it was totally, it was bizarre. I couldn't believe that it was that
Wow.
coincidental, right? But what I realized is that it really did take me a good 11 months to prepare this female to be with this child in every single area that was required.
Mhm.
The older the child, the younger I can set
Sure.
with the adolescent dog. But the younger, they definitely have to be older, just because they're still puppies. They're still, they still want to run and play and go and do,
Right.
and they don't. They're not concrete in where they're supposed to be doing that. But I will say that the moment a service vest goes on one of my dogs, they 100% know that they're working. They
Mm.
absolutely know that that's their job. When you take it
Mhm.
off of them is when they get to puppy play. What
Mhm.
I'm referring to is the zoomies, right? When you've got a couple toddlers on the ground, the vest is off, and the dog is like running full out throughout the foyer in the living room.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about in terms of the
Gotcha.
maturity or immaturity
Sure.
aspect of it.
How do you help people give your dogs that quality of life so that they're not just a working machine because they're a living animal. They have
They
needs
are. And that's
quality of life
why
too.
the vetting process
Okay,
is so detailed with us,
sure.
because these are my babies. I
Mhm.
always use the line with my people, you may be paying me for them, but I'm really only borrowing them out for their lifetime. They will always be mine.
Yeah.
And so I am in contact with my clients from the
Yeah.
first time they contact me till the end of the dog's life. There's
Mhm.
never a question that they will ever have that I will not answer. There is not an issue that I will not physically go out and fix if needed to do that.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because there is nobody on this planet that knows my dogs better than I do, from their daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, not only physical development, but emotional development as well. So
Yeah.
I need to know as I'm vetting, people call me because they think they're vetting me, right? And my dogs and my program and my process. Well, in actuality, the reason that we probably deny 65 to 70% of the people that contact us is because I not only listen to what they're saying, but every bit as important, I listen to what they're not saying.
Yeah.
And after years and years of doing this, I have to say I'm pretty darn good knowing within 5 to 6 minutes,
Yeah. I'm sure you know right away before they know. And
right?
you'll help. Now,
Right.
do you find some people come in completely unaware of what would be required and involved, and you're able to work with them and educate them through?
Most people, it is such a daunting journey for them.
Yeah.
And there are so many misleads out there. There are
Yeah.
so many organizations that are nothing but puppy mills, that require you to do things that would be impossible for my clients to do to receive a service dog.
Yeah.
And even then, the chances of the service dog being equipped enough to provide
Sure.
what they've been hired to provide, more times than not, doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. For example, many of these organizations out there have a 2 to 3 year waiting list.
Mhm.
And you think, wow, I need to get into this because they're so popular and they're this and they're that. Is actually not the case. Number one, there are three things that bother me about some of the organizations and what they require. Number one, once you waited 2 to 3 years for your dog, they contact you, right? And they want you to uproot your life for 3 weeks and go to their facility where they then train you and the dog at the same time. Now, I have a couple issues with this. Number one, I don't care where my clients come from. I don't know many, if any of them, that have the ability to uproot their life for 3 weeks to then go to someone else's facility. For that facility, after 3 weeks, to say to them, I'm really sorry, but it's not a match. So let's go back on the waiting list for 2 to 3 years, and then you can come and uproot your life again. The
That
other
happens.
issue that I have with this is the fact that these programs are 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 taking in dogs from breeders all over the country. So when these organizations take in these dogs, they have absolutely no clue as to the temperament, the health, the intelligence of these dogs. So the reason there's a 2 to 3 year waiting list is because number one, most of them fail out. Number two, if they don't fail out, they're dying at 3, 4, 5 years of age. Okay. That's my major. I could think of nothing more catastrophic than one of my 3, 4, 5 year old children with autism finding their voice, finding their confidence, finding their social skills, finding their words, and then having that very medical machine die on them because it's unhealthy and leave them. It would undo everything that had been joined together for them.
Yeah.
The next thing that bothers me is I could care less as to how my dogs perform on my property. They have been bred here, they have been raised here, they have been educated here. I want to know how my dogs are performing in my client's life and their daily activities, their kids going on the school bus, going to school with our service dogs, taking the bus home, going to the gym to work out. I want to know how our dogs are performing. That is why we set up a 2-step process of, I first go out there when the dog is 95% complete. I fly out to wherever they are and I spend 3 to 4 days. I I basically go through their lives from 7 a.m. until the person goes to sleep at night. And I look for gaps. I look for gaps in the communication between the client and the dog. If the child's too young, it's the parents. I look for gaps in the parent's ability to understand the alerts of the dog. I really look very heavily for things that maybe I could finish better. Then I bring the dog back home and I
Okay.
fill in any of those gaps. And then I return for another 3 to 4 days. And that's when I leave the dog there. But to go to someone's facility and say, okay, you and the dog now learn it together, go home, you're now on your own, which is exactly what happens. I couldn't imagine. Number one, I couldn't imagine putting my dogs in a position to fail like that. And the clients that have waited this long for life-saving medical devices in the form of a service dog are now not receiving what they've waited so long for. So yeah, I have a problem with all of that for
I
that
can
reason, for
imagine,
those
yeah,
reasons.
for sure. I mean, those are really, they're a big deal. I remember thinking when you brought it up, I never, again, just hadn't thought about it. When you go to the location, you see things, maybe they have a split level house, or maybe they have a different step somewhere, or, I mean, there's got to be so
Maybe they
many
have
little things.
stairs with 3 feet in between each one that look downwards that the dogs have never experienced. They're not going to experience it with them. They're going to experience it with me. And I had that. I had that situation where it was for a young woman, 17 years old, who lived on the upper level of the house. These stairs, I could not physically get my body sideways up the stairs. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst of it was that there was literally 3 feet of air between each stair. My dogs had no clue as to what they were stepping on. It took me, okay, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it took me 10 minutes to show the dog that it was okay going up the stairs, but there's no way they could have done it alone.
For sure.
That's what you're
Sure.
referring to.
And that makes sense. Yeah. Well, there's just all these little things. Like, how would you know? And how would you know if you're just bringing them to you? And like you said, at your property, of course, they're going to perform well. It's where
Right,
everything worked.
right,
And so
right,
now it's like, but the test is in the real world, and that's what you're
right,
presenting. And I
right.
love that. So, okay, so if I'm summarizing this, we start with they contact you, they explain their needs, you sort of vet, see if they can manage one of your dogs, and then you come back and say, okay, cool, I think this would be the best fit for you. And that might be an adolescent, generally speaking, an older dog, potentially an adult, or a puppy if we have a little bit more time in the process and really need something catered. And then you cater your program to finish out that dog specifically for them in whatever capacity.
Correct.
Go out there for, when the dog's about 95%, and you do your quick, like, this is sort of like our pre-test. Like, is this
Right,
good, ready to go? You pick out a couple things you need to work with, maybe bring the dog back, finish those things usually, right?
right.
And now
Exactly.
you have like this very polished, dog that's ready to bring back. And then you integrate that. And in those process, when you go out those 2 times, are you also explaining how to manage the dog, where they need to go to the bathroom, when they need a break? Are you giving them a routine?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question because before my dogs ever leave my property, I have a 2-hour Zoom meeting, whether I'm selling a family companion dog or a service dog. I have a two, first and foremost, what I do is I send out links to every single one of my clients with everything they will ever need for the lifetime of the dog.
Okay.
Um, and then prior to the dog ever leaving here, I have a 2-hour Zoom meeting with every single client where I go through with them from morning till night their schedule with this pup, from what to feed, when to feed, how to prepare the food, how to ensure that within 5 days of owning one of my pups, not only will it pee and poop in the same exact spot for the rest of its life, but it will potty on demand. Within 8 to 9 days, one of the links I send out is for a bell that hangs from the door. Within 8 to 9 days, my pups will be ringing the bell to tell them they have to go outside and go potty. When I get there, I literally go through that same exact Zoom meeting all over again for my service dogs, where I feed the dogs with them. I take them out. I show them what I mean by standing in one spot, giving the dog the circumference of the 6-foot leash only, using the words hurry up that the dog's been trained on to pee and poop on demand. And then we go from there. And obviously, the older the dog gets, the more time between the dog can handle it prior to ever going out to needing to go to the bathroom again. And that fits in with the kids that are in next week. For example, I'm delivering a service dog that's sitting behind me right now to a 7-year-old boy who's still in grammar school. So the question was, do the teachers go out with the boy to let the dog potty? And when do we do that? Do we do it during lunch? Do we do it when it's recess time? How do we do that? So literally, when I tell you that from Wednesday morning, I will be hopping on the school bus to make sure that the dog is comfortable in the seat next to the child. Oh, that reminds me, I have to get a non-stickum pad because the bus seats are so slippery that the dogs can't stay on them. They slip right off. It's crazy. But and then spending the day in school with the young man, right? Making sure that he is handling the dog properly, that there aren't any questions that the teachers have for me. And then I ride back on the bus with the child. We go home and we finish out the day. So yes, to answer your question, we go through the whole process over again because I'm living there to make sure that they have no questions.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense.
But
I
not
don't
even
know
only
how.
questions, that they physically experienced the daily life of their new companion.
Mhm. Yeah. And where do people like, where are certain struggles you see that people don't anticipate or that you kind of have to go over ahead of time with them? That, yeah, what don't people think about?
What they don't think about mainly, and I just had it this weekend, is the fact that when I provide a dog for a young child like this, I need the dog to literally be attached at that child's hip all the time. So I was in a situation last weekend where I literally they had 3 nannies, a cook, and and someone to clean the house. And so because of this little boy's seizure, so often everyone was always holding him, and because of that, he has lack of mobility. He's not walking. He can barely stand on his own. And then what happens is when he sits, because he has this other issue with his core, with his stomach core, if he sits up, he falls down and lands with his head. So they're always holding him. And because they were in such a routine, there were several times when they went to take him upstairs with a bottle to put him down to bed. And I'm like, wait, where did he go? I need to be a part of this. So, what they don't recognize is the need, especially in the beginning, for this dog to be a part of whether you're changing a diaper, whether you're feeding a bottle, whether the kid is eating lunch or breakfast. The dog needs to be there. And when you have other people or the mom, and this is the big thing too, is it wasn't that the dog wasn't ready to stay there this weekend. It was that the mom wasn't ready for the dog to stay there this weekend. Okay.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is most of my families are living such a crisis that trying to make sure that their child lives from seizure to seizure, and calling all different hospitals to look for new things that are coming out, new medical advances, right? That for her to split 25% of her brain to now focus on when you take the child to physical therapy, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you open up your door, you get out. You take the stroller out, you put the child in the stroller. Now you go to the back of the truck, you open it up, you put the leash on the dog, you call the dog down now. It's another whole facet that she needs, that my parents need to become seamless. So it doesn't become a problem, but instead remains the asset that they paid me for. So those are some of the big things, is incorporating it into every single aspect, and they're not used to doing that.
Sure. Yeah, it is
That's
a
one of the
sustained
biggest issues.
phase, and I bet that's a little bit of work, right? So it's kind of a bubble because you have to take on more work so that this can eventually streamline and
Exactly.
make it better, which
Exactly.
anything like this is.
Right.
So that makes sense. Do you have some of your dogs? I mean, you're in there in school. Have you run into any issues in the schools, or how does that usually
Always,
go?
always, because people aren't abreast of the law.
Okay.
And so, everybody had ESA dogs, right? Emotional support animals. And actually, American Airlines was the first ones to shut it down because people were bringing pigs and birds and monkeys on planes, calling them emotional support animals. American Airlines finally said, "We're done. We have yapping dogs the entire flight. It's disturbing our customers. We will no longer allow ESA dogs on or ESA animals on our planes."
Yeah.
But by law, they were required to allow service dogs. So even before this, I never registered my dogs as CSA animals. I just thought it was meaningless. And of course, for those who aren't aware of what defines the difference between an ESA dog and a service dog, is that a service dog must be trained to perform an act for its owner.
Mm.
And so, for example, a month ago, I went to for my first visit with a 17-year-old boy, nonverbal autism, and we went out for all of us went out for recess. And his school, he's in a streamlined school, which is the first time I had ever experienced that before with an autistic child, where they were actually in a streamlined, in just a regular school instead of being in a specialty school.
Oh,
And
okay.
so his school was attached to a high school. And for recess, the special ed teachers uh, took the children on to walk this big track that the high school had. And so I'm in the middle of the track on the grass, and I'm watching this young man have the custom belt, which attaches to the dog, and he's walking the track with the dog. And all of a sudden, I hear from behind me this golf cart like coming up quickly. And I immediately ignore the golf cart and I walk to the boy because I know something's going on, right? And the golf cart stops, and so does the boy and the teacher and myself. And this gentleman turns to me and says, um, "I'm sorry, but we don't allow dogs on our equipment." Now, he was referring to his equipment being the track that they were walking on. So at this point, I'm exhausted. It's been 3 days of me doing this already. And so I really did have to like bite my cheek for a minute and take a deep breath. And I turned to him and I said, "Excuse me." I said, "I so appreciate the fact that you don't allow dogs on school, uh, uh, on school, uh, 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 uh
Equipment.
see exactly on school equipment." Um, and I can totally appreciate and respect that. Now let me inform you of something. Number one, this is not a dog. Number two, this is a medical device. Number three, this is a service dog that this young man requires. And number four, it's illegal for you to even mention it to me. So unless you guys want to take this to court, and he says to me, he says, "Well, it's coming from uh, the county or the something, whatever regulates the school." I said, "Then I support you in taking exactly the information and exactly my tone back to your superiors, give them that information, and give them my phone number if they'd like to contact me." This happens all the time, happens all the time. And people are just unaware of the laws.
Mhm.
And we finish what we don't stop walking the track. We continue to walk the track and we go back in the building. And within 2 minutes of me being in the building, the supervisor from the across the way comes flying in to the classroom and says, Miss Kelly, I'm so sorry. I apologize. It was a complete misunderstanding. Of course he's allowed anywhere he wants to go." I said, "Thank you very much. Please educate the rest of your staff as such."
Right.
But that's where it's my responsibility to
Mm.
continue to educate the
Yeah.
public because they are unaware of the laws.
And I do think it gets a lot of there's a lot of confusion because ESA is very different than service dogs.
And
ESA
we
is
abused it.
certification. Hmm.
So
You
everybody knows the abuse. Everybody's been in the airport or flown on a plane with a dog barking in their ear the entire time or responding to another dog on the plane, right? That's not what defines a service dog.
right.
So there's a reason why we're skeptical.
Yes. And these laws that you're referring to, they're federal laws, right? It's not state
They are.
specific.
They
Yeah.
are.
So anywhere in the United States, it's,
Anywhere in the United States.
do you have to educate your clients on this part of it as well?
Yes, very much, because they would be so intimidated. I mean, the teachers all of a sudden like became white, and I'm like, I got you guys, just stand back for a minute. I'll handle this. Don't worry about a thing, you know. And they kind of laughed at me because they had already picked up on my meek personality. And so, I handled it. But this happens often. Um, it's I don't know why this just came up, maybe because we were just talking about airports, but I can't tell you how many times I'll be in the airport because I'm always flying somewhere to deliver my dogs. And I'll be walking in one direction and someone will put their hand out to touch my dog. And I feel like I want to break the wrist because, first of all, whether it was a service dog or it's not a service dog, you know, to impose your body and touch my animal is infuriating enough. But for red vest to be everywhere on this dog, hanging from its neck and everything else, and to absolutely not have any respect for anything like that is infuriating. It's infuriating.
Yeah.
That brings me to the young kids that always come running at my dogs in airports, and again, my response is stop, you know it's my job again to say, you know what, number one, you never ever touch anybody's dog without talking to mom and dad and getting their permission for it. Number two, when you see a vest like this, it means the dog doesn't get touched at all. So if we can start them young enough, maybe by a couple of generations from now, people will have a better understanding for what defines it,
Yeah.
and the rules behind it,
Yeah,
but they don't.
absolutely. What do you wish people knew about service dogs that they just don't?
I wish that people really understood the medical necessity and how, if we had the ability to get out of our own quote unquote perfect lives and imagine just for a moment what you would feel like as a parent, as a brother of a or sister of someone who's impaired, uh, as a grandparent, as an anyone, envisioning having a child that you've brought into this world to be the very best that they can be,
Yeah.
and to find that from the onset they have tremendous limitations, but to remove so many of those limitations, all they need to do is have a dog to give them the freedom, the physical and emotional freedom to live like you and I do, to be independent, to be social, to be active, to be part of our world, our society. That's what I want people to know. I want people to know that it's not a game. I want people to know that they don't go on Amazon and buy a service vest and put it on their dog, that this is a medical device and it cannot be treated as a joke because you don't want to pay for your dog to sit in a carrier on a plane. That's what I want people to know most.
Mhm. Yeah, that's, I mean, because there is no organization that's stamping this. There's no standard.
None. And it's a
Right.
fallacy for people to think that they are. You brought up earlier, it's the law,
Yeah.
right?
It's
In
federal
terms
law.
of service dogs, there
Mhm.
is no law that stamps a
Mhm.
service dog to be a service dog, and that's why people get away with abusing the system,
Right, which is why, I mean, regulation is a whole other discussion.
right?
But there is a considerable difference from my dog who's nice and won't bite anyone and bark in public,
Right.
emotional support animal, to your dogs who are preventing people,
Medically alerting people.
I mean, like there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's really hard because people are they're really abusing the system for what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. It
So
just makes it harder for the people that are in need of it.
yeah, absolutely. So you had talked about with your four different, the four different main German Shepherd lines and how yours are specifically this, and you kind of talked about like they're probably a little
The
bit
four different
different.
bloodlines in German Shepherds.
Yes, and but the bloodlines that I'm seeing in German Shepherds working the border because I live by,
Right.
Arizona, very different temperament, very different kind of.
Completely different. Those are soldiers, literally.
Yes. And
And when I was discussing the differences between the American line, the East German line, the Czech line, and the West German bloodline, number one, the East German dogs and the Czech dogs in this country have just been destroyed. That is why, well, the American line is flooded with major hip and elbow dysplasia, renal failure, leukemia, cancer, and DM. Uh, the East German dogs and the Czech dogs were originally created by and for the Soviet Union's military. And then we brought them over to the United States for our military and our canine police force. And our departments haven't touched these East or Czech dogs in this country for the past 12 to 14 years because their minds and bodies can't be trusted. They're dying under the age of 5 or 6, they're crippled by 3, or they're dangerous anywhere between 13 to 18 months of age. And so what they've done, what our military and our canine police forces have done, they've done one of two things. They've either moved over to the Malinois breed, which is strictly a professional breed, or they're going directly to the Czech Republic to get them. But these are working dogs in the strongest sense of the word. These dogs absolutely are on 24/7. They have no off switch. They do not make family companion dogs. It was like when Osama bin Laden was taken down by that Malinois, and everybody thought, this is the breed I want. I want a Malinois in my house. And the breeders actually had the gall to sell it to them, and then they were returned 2 months later because these are soldiers. That's why they go underwater with Navy SEALs. They jump out of helicopters. These dogs they're soldiers. They're robots. They're the most brilliant, physically agile animals on the planet.
yeah.
They're not family companion dogs.
No, I mean, they're much more intense than my German short hairs, and my German short
Oh,
hairs couch surf for hours, if you
right,
let them.
right.
And I mean, and you just take that to the whole other level. You could never have one of those dogs do what your dogs are asked to do. It just wouldn't work.
And the
They're
funny thing is, when you bring that up, is because my dogs will take down a 300-pound man in 2.5 seconds. The difference is they don't work 24/7 to do it, right?
yeah.
Where the East or the Czech dogs or the Malinois, they work 24/7 to do just that. You know what I
Mm,
mean? That's what they get rewarded for. They get rewarded for picking up a scent. They get rewarded for taking down a man, finding a man in the bush. They work to be praised, whether it's
mm,
with their ball or whatever it is that they use. That's what they live for. So we're just building that drive over and we're implementing more drive and more drive and more drive because that's what they get praised for,
yeah. And
right?
your
And
dogs
that's
are
why they're cloning
entirely,
them.
well, yours are entirely different. So they're not working to play tug, you
They
know?
are. They are though. They're
Okay.
defined as a working dog. But the
Yeah.
difference is that my dogs have an off switch.
Yes. And
These dogs that the police force and the military use do not.
yeah.
That's why when people bring them into their homes as family companion dogs, and they've taken them on a 20-mile run, and they come home and the dog looks up at them and says, "Hey, mom, dad, that was a great appetizer. What are we doing for real?" And when they don't do the for real, the dog starts to chew the siding off their home because these dogs need something 24 hours a day. There is no off switch.
Yeah.
My
They're
dogs are napping as we speak. They're napping. They're not working.
Yeah,
you
and
know
that's temperament and bloodlines. Like there's no way around that. I mean,
Correct.
you can't.
Correct.
And your
You
dogs,
can't train it.
I feel like your dogs are just like emotionally more mature, much quicker. Like I know they're still going to be puppy.
uh,
But your dogs,
I have a couple here you beg to differ, but yes, I
but for the
do. I
most
do.
part,
They're babies,
yeah.
but my boys really don't fully physically or mentally mature until they're 3.5. So they're just big galoops. I mean, literally big galoops.
Mhm.
They're unbelievable. They're unbelievable.
Well, you talked about the differences in the two, and that you said it's very important to pair people with the right male or female for their
Right.
needs. Can you explain a little bit some of the differences and of course, um,
The genders. So it's funny because uh, when people ask me how I match people,
Mhm.
um, and I say to them, I know within 2 to 3 weeks of the dog's age what puppy is going to go for what type of service ultimately.
Mhm.
And they're like, that's insane. How would you ever know that? And every breeder listening to this is going to say, that's impossible. How would you ever know that? I'm going to explain it like this. Okay. So imagine you've got a 12 by 12 whelping box. Okay.
Mm,
And the mom is laying on one side of the whelping box, and you've got 8 puppies on the other side that are sleeping. And the first one wakes up and looks at mom across the whelping box and says, I know darn well I'm going to barrel over, tunnel through, go around. I'm going to make it to mom's milk. I know I am. Nothing will stand in my way. And then you got the second grouping of puppies that wake up and say, wow, she's pretty far away, but I heard slow and steady wins the race. So I'm going to start moseying on that way now. And then you've got the third grouping of puppies that wake up and say, oh my goodness, Uber X, please. There is not a chance I can make it. Okay. So although it makes it sound like there's a cavern between the three of them, it's so minute that only someone like me and my husband would recognize it. The first grouping of puppies are puppies that I use as epileptic diabetic detection dogs. I use them as guide dogs. Okay. They have that little extra, okay. And it's usually a female. It's usually the females. The second grouping of puppies I will use for PTSD, anxiety.
mm,
Um, uh, uh, the third grouping of puppies I will 100% use for depression, anxiety, panic attacks, autism, children with autism. Um, uh, and then, of course, they morph over into being epileptic detection dogs at the same time. So all three can do it all. When you're
mm.
talking about guide dogs or hearing impaired, that kind of a thing, it takes just a little extra oomph for them to be able to be educated in. And I know it sounds simple for us who have sight, but to walk straight, teach a dog to go around a sign, and then continue in a straight line is quite advanced. It's quite advanced. And so it just takes a little extra oomph from the puppies that say, I'm going to barrel over, under, through, but I'm going to get the job done.
Yeah,
And that's the kind of temperament I need for that.
they're just a little bit more driven to the purpose.
Driven. Yep. Yep.
Mm, that
Yep.
makes Yeah, which is why, of course, the easiest thing to do is just call you and say, "This is what I need. You tell me what I need."
That's why, whether it's a family companion dog or it's a service dog, what
Yeah,
people hire me for is to match them with
yeah,
exactly what it is that they need. Because as a kid, I'd go to a breeder, and even then I had a really good eye, but the
mhm,
breeder would let out 10 puppies, for example. And what I didn't know when I'm picking out my puppy to take home is that the one puppy that is running around crazy has to poop, right? The one puppy that's laying there lethargic just had a 6-course meal. So for me to spend 20 minutes and pick out the puppy that I want, it's a crapshoot. There's no way to know. But if you're looking for a puppy, find a reputable breeder that has taken the time to know their puppies inside and out, that can give you, whether you have, 2-year-old triplets at home or you have all teenagers over the age of 11, your breeder will be able to match you
yeah.
with the specific pup that will best fit your family.
Mhm,
I would never give a family who's never owned a dog before a male. I wouldn't do it. They develop much more slowly. They don't know where their bodies are. They're teddy bears. I love them,
mhm.
but they just mature too slowly. I would start them with a female and then have them come back for a male.
That makes sense. Like if people want to get a pet from you, can they just get a pet? Can they have one of those
They,
incredible dogs as a pet?
Absolutely, a family companion dog.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
What would
we've
you?
we've we've cut down a lot on that, in terms of doing family companion dogs. But
Sure.
I always do make exceptions to families, especially families that have never owned a dog before, because I know that they're going to be teachable, and I know that I can provide them with something that their children will remember for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a lofty goal anyway. It's beautiful. So, for someone considering a service dog, what should they know before they start the journey? Is there anything that you would to get their head in the right
It's
space?
a process.
Okay.
Yes, it's a process. It's not an event.
Mhm.
And anyone tells you an event, you're going to get a very expensive family dog that does nothing for you. Um, uh, it's very important that wherever you get your dog from, that I personally think it's got to come from a program where they are breeding their own dogs, they're raising their own dogs, and they're educating their own dogs. Because just like every dog I sell, whether it's a family companion dog or a service dog, we include full comprehensive training when the dog is old enough. Almost every one of our dogs comes back to us between 9 to 11 months of age, and they stay with us for 3 to 4 weeks for their full comprehensive training.
Yeah.
The reasons that we include that in with the purchase price, there are several reasons. The first reason we include it is because I want my pup to be a part of every single aspect that that family wants it to be a part of, whether taking a family walk in the evening, or they're having they're vacationing with their dog, or they're having family dinners. Whatever they're doing, I want to know that their dog is 100% responsive to them at all times. The second reason we include it, which is by far one of the most important to me, then as of today, I have 7 generations alone on my property. I have pups from 3 weeks to 17 years of age. So when their puppy comes back to me between 9 to 11 months of age, it is out with its brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts and uncles, mothers, fathers, grandparents, great grandparents, and great great grandparents. And the education that my elder dogs are able to teach the younger ones is something I've tried to replicate as a human for as many years as I've been in business and been unable to do it. The next reason we include it is because you can't own one without it being properly educated, which leads me to my final reason, and that's I don't want anybody else touching my dogs. There are just too many yahoos out there that want to control a German Shepherd instead of using age appropriate, positively reinforced education. So the same thing goes when you are looking at these organizations for a service dog. 98% of them are outsourcing their puppies. So not only are they being bred by somebody else, but then you're bringing them in to be trained by somebody else, which then means you have no clue as to what you're producing, if it's going to succeed or if it's going to fail, or if it's going to live past 5 or it's not, if it's going to be dangerous over young children situations or not, because none of these dogs have had those kinds of experiences. So my suggestion is when you're looking for a service dog, you find an organization that completes the process from conception of the dogs through the end of the dog's life. And if you can find anybody other than me that does that, let me know.
After you explain it, I don't know how you could get reliability in any other way. I
I
just don't
agree.
think you can.
I agree.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit? I know breeders are listening to this thinking, okay, so how does she do it all? You've got days you got to go out with each dog twice. I mean,
I
there's,
have some incredible people
yeah. So tell
that
us a
help
little bit
me.
about what happens on the back end of your business.
So
What
my
does
husband is
happen?
really the the developmental process really of the babies, you
Okay.
know, from conception to socializing them to, to educating them as young ones through play. We have my kennel manager Benjamin, who's phenomenal with them. I have someone else who works for us. So the puppies are out being socialized every day, and the thing that's so amazing about what we do here is that all our dogs can go out at the same time. They can all go out and play together. So it's not like I ever have a situation where a male can't go out with a male, which as breeders, we understand how many people can say that they can let one
Yeah,
stud
not
dog
very
out with
many.
another stud dog, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have to be able to do that. Not for lack of space. I have to be able to do that to ensure the temperament that I'm producing, because
Mhm.
I couldn't allow them to develop any other way, right?
Yeah.
Are we very careful with certain stud dogs that know that there are bitches in heat when they're out playing? Absolutely. I'm not going to be stupid about it. But um, uh, for the most part, all the dogs can go out together.
Wow. That's an incredible feat in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you do that through training or is it just temperament
It's
mostly?
bloodlines. It's all genetic. It's
Hmm.
all genetic. And it's 98% genetic. Honest to goodness. It can't be done any other way.
Mhm.
But we also make it prosper by continuing that socialization.
Mhm.
The one aspect that I can't fix is my dogs have a thing for white dogs. I can't tell you what it is,
What do you
but
mean?
it's in their bloodlines. It's genetic. They see a white dog and they think that like hell is opened up to bring them down under. They do not like little white dogs. I can't do anything
Like
to help
little
it.
white dogs?
Little white dogs. I swear to God, they think that they're ghosts. I don't know. I don't know.
That's really
It's the
funny.
only color breed on the planet that the it's like an elephant being afraid of a mouse. That's what it reminds me of.
Hilarious.
Right?
Do they get scared of them or do they want to eat them?
And they get scared of them and then they want to eat them. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Oh,
I've never been able to
it's
figure that
genetic.
out.
That's so funny.
Right?
Um, oh man. Okay, so you have this. You got to produce
So
a.
some
Yeah.
people run the field at a Ziegler show. Some people run it
Yeah.
with like their dog's favorite toy.
Yeah.
I'm running it with a little white dog on top of my head.
That's pretty
Okay.
funny.
Right.
Um, so your husband's running the whelping puppy rearing stuff for the babies, right? So he gets that
Yes,
started. You've got
yes.
other people who are interacting. You're
And the socialization, and he
doing.
takes them out every day,
Mhm.
whether he's going to the bank or he's going to the grocery store, he's going here or there. And we start them at a very young age. We have vests that are very, very small. We start them at a very young age. Um, because whether it's a vacuum or it's a mop in a grocery store, it's just something else like that. Every day they get to see something different.
Mhm.
And that develops and continues the confidence that they were bred with, right? And then when it comes to the more intricate training of the opening of the scent training, for example, that's where I come in at a lot with the different puzzle games and things like that that are more intricately detailed for each specific um, uh, uh, uh,
Eventual job that
need.
they'll have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
each
That
specific
makes
need.
sense. That makes sense. Wow. So, with all of your experience, what advice do you have for new breeders getting started?
My advice would be you need to start with the very, very best of whatever breed you're looking at. You need to make sure that whatever breed it is, you need to look at the worst physical defects that arise in that breed. And you need to do your due diligence to make sure that there's not one, not two, not three, that there are 8 to 10 generations that you're buying from that have been cleared of all of those genetic defects. Not just some of them, all of those genetic defects, so that when you start, you are starting with a clean slate.
Yeah.
That's the most important aspect of it.
Yeah. The things you can't undo.
Things you can't undo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you buy one from one litter. I don't recommend buying two puppies at the same time ever. I've never allowed a client to buy two puppies at the same time because we do not want them to become dogs. We want them to become people dogs, right? And they'll create a bond with each other that eliminates human need. Um, so what my clients do is when they bring me their dogs at 9 to 11 months for training, that's when they take their other one home, because the
Mm.
other dog is already bonded with the human, right? The older dog already knows where it gets everything from. So the puppy will just follow suit.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Cynthia Kelly. You can learn more about her on our website, regisregal.com, or on social media. She's at Regis Regal on Instagram and Facebook, and on YouTube as Regis Regal German Shepherds. Thank you, Cynthia, for taking the time to talk with me, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please tap that like button. It helps me better understand you and supports the channel. If you're a current or aspiring dog breeder, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos come out. Thanks.